Bad visual communication can cost your organisation, and not just financially. Our next speaker is on a mission to eradicate dull, dreary and damaging presentations. Please welcome Dave Henson.
So good afternoon everybody. I want to deliver one simple message to you today, a message that you may not know, a message that you may not believe, and that is that your slides suck. Think about it. Your company brochures, your financial report and accounts, your videos, your branding, your stationery, your website, they don't suck, and the reason they don't suck is because you give them to professional designers and they produce and design them for you. But your slides, well, you give them to Simon in sales, or Layla in HR, or Imran in production, or Dawn, your marketing director, or Ella, the client account manager, or maybe to Steve, your finance director. And what they all have in common is that they were taught how to use PowerPoint at school by an IT teacher. I was taught woodwork at school, by the way. My shelves suck. So I'm Dave Henson, known as the Slide Presentation Man, and what I do is I teach business owners and directors to produce better slides, better visual communications, and I do this either by producing and designing the presentations or by training their teams on how to become better visual communicators. And the consequences of using bad slides can be quite serious. It can damage your brand, it can harm your reputation, and it will almost certainly destroy the message that you're trying to get across to your audience. And then think about the poor sap from your team who's got to stand up here delivering the talk, staring out probably at a sea of unengaged faces, people staring at their phone or looking out of the window, or worse still, getting up and walking out of the room. And PowerPoint is rubbish. But only, strangely enough, when it's used the way that it's been designed to be used, because you end up with slides full of text and bullet points. And so I'm sure that Simon and Layla and Imran and Dawn and Ella and Steve are perfectly fab at their jobs. They're probably really good at what they do. But of course, having been taught IT at school and then having to use a corporate PowerPoint template, well, it's going to mean that the message that they're trying to get across to their audience is going to have an adverse effect on your organisation. And this was brought home to me by a slide that I was compelled to create back in 2020. It was a slide that was actually never used, but it's a slide that garnered a lot of comments on LinkedIn, two of which made me stop and think. So it was the 31st of October 2020. It's a Saturday afternoon, it's 4 p.m, and many people are gathered around the television to watch the Prime Minister and Sir Chris Whitty and Sir Patrick Vallance deliver a really important message. And that important message was, Christmas is cancelled. We're going to be in lockdown over Christmas. And the slide, or one of the slides that they used to justify this decision, this message, was this one. Yeah. Okay. I think you've already guessed that this slide sucks. Let's have a quick whistle-stop tour as to what's wrong with this slide. First of all, here's the title. The England new SPI-M combined projection bed. What's SPI-M? Anyone know? I had to look it up. Scientific Pandemic Influenza Group on Modelling. Who cares? What about V-beds? Again, I had to watch it back again. V-beds is ventilator beds. On the left, you've got acute beds. On the right, you've got ventilator beds. And then you've got the legend on there twice. You don't need the legend on there twice, but I'll come back to that shortly. Well, what's going on here? I mean, you've got this really... It's dropped onto another line. You've got this really strange x-axis. And you've got the source. Now, the source I know is quite important for credibility, but when you're presenting with slides, you should keep them uncluttered. You've got to get the message across to people really, really quickly. Which also applies to this, an admirable sentiment, but it has no place on this particular slide. And then you've got all this gubbins going on. You've got the green, you've got the coloured text, you've got the lines, you've got the arrows. it's very difficult to decipher what's going on there. And then why are there two charts? Well, the trend on the second chart is exactly the same as the trend on the first chart. You don't need two charts on the slide. But the most important thing about this slide is this bit here. That bit there is the all-important message on this slide, okay? The 3 dates by which, if we do nothing, we're going to pass some very uncomfortable milestones. So I was compelled to create a slide that addressed these concerns. And what I came up with was this: simple title, projected bed usage, acute beds in England. And then you have a very, very simple graph. You have the very simple y-axis, a very simple x-axis, the months delineated. And then we talk about how the bed usage went up during April, back down during the summer, and back up again to the point where we are now, which is October 2020. And if we do nothing, then it's going to carry on rising. It's going to carry on rising to the point where if we do nothing by the 20th of November, we will have reached the April peak. 3 days later, we will have used up all of the available beds in the NHS. And about 10 days after that, we will have to start cancelling operations in the NHS. So I hope that you think that's a lot better than the original slide that the government used. But then I started thinking, well, there's another way of telling this by using a compelling story. And so I came up with this one as well. So if we do nothing as a country, then by the 20th of November, we will have exceeded the previous April peak. 3 days later, if we do nothing, we will have used up all of the available beds in the NHS. And then less than 2 weeks later, 10 days later, the NHS will be overwhelmed. So what I've done there, obviously I've used emotive pictures to bring across the emotion of the situation. So it was at this point that I started getting comments on LinkedIn. People said, these slides could save lives. And I thought, wow, that's an amazing thought, isn't it? A bit of visual communication whose aim is to save lives. And so we've gone from that, through to that, and through to that. I don't know which one you think should have been used by the government. So I'll leave you with the final question. What cost can your organisation bear to take with bad visual communication? Is it your brand, your reputation, your money, or maybe even other people's lives? Thank you.